Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another edition of the Lap Down podcast. We are back after a unscheduled week off last week due to commitments with our guys, but we are back post Bristol. I am Greg, and with me tonight is Brett, Ryan, and Tyler. How are we doing tonight, fellas?
Doing fantastic. How about you guys?
Just bracing for impact down here in good old GA.
Yep.
But as always, we like to thank our band, the Alkali Project, for the intro and outro music on this podcast. And I would just like to say before we start, anyone listening to this podcast, if you are in the have being affected by this storm down in the southeast, our prayers and thoughts from the lap down go out to you, and hope that you have a safe ride through it and that you come out safe on the other side. We're just going to jump right in because we got a lot of breaking news from this past week. Starting off, the Indycar series announced a couple days ago that they now have a charter system going into effect, just like NASCAR. It will start next year in 2025 and run through 2031, I believe. And every race except for the Indianapolis 500 will guarantee a driver a starting spot in that race. The Indy 500 will continue as traditional as always, where every driver has to qualify in on time. Brett, I don't know if you're an IndyCar fan, but we've been through the whole charter thing with NASCAR now for a number of years. How do we feel about it going to IndyCar now?
Honestly, I feel like with the situation that's going on with NASCAR, it's going to happen again with Indy. That's what I think.
All right. What about you, Ryan? I know you and Tyler are more the IndyCar fans in the chat.
Yeah. For me, the way I've said it a couple of times is that IndyCar looked at NASCAR's problem and were like, yep, that's our solution. What problem it's actually solving, I am still unaware of, and I have not seen a great answer from IndyCar on what problem this is actually solving for them. Because that's the biggest thing. If this was and I've said this a couple times in the chat, over the weekend and since this was announced, as to if this was a 2 or 3 year plan put in place to help give teams stability through the pandemic, that would have been a reason for a charter system to potentially be in place. And again, if it's a short term thing, but as of right now, this is a long term plan with no real problem, at least not that I can see, that this is actively solving.
Don't get me started on this.
Go ahead, Tyler. Let's hear the rant. Let's hear it.
My personal opinion is that it ruined NASCAR pretty much. Ruined little smart up teams that wanted to be in the Cup Series, and now it's going to ruin teams like Dale Coyne or smaller teams like AJ Foyt Racing or Rahal Letterman.
But all those teams are getting charters, so it's not like...
Well, those teams are, yes, but you got Dale Coyne and Prema coming in. Or Dale Coyne, that's a small team that's pretty successful team.
Yeah.
Could lose money because they can't afford charters because they're a small team.
Coyne got at least one charter, right? Or did they get two?
One.
Okay.
They got two. The thing is every team that has been racing so far has got either 2 or 3. The only team that is getting affected by this charter system and is not getting a charter is Prema Racing, which is joining.
Prema.
But they have to compete for 2 spots in a race every week.
Yeah, and something unlike in NASCAR, a bit of a difference from the NASCAR system is that there isn't actually a limit to how many teams a chartered team can enter. So it's not like if a team has three. Oh, sorry, but
that is false, Ryan. They limited like NASCAR. It's limited to 3 charters.
A team can only
team.
own. Yeah, a team can only own up to 3 charters. But if Andretti wants to, or if Ganassi wants to, they can bring more than 3 cars to the track each week as a way to try and bump out a team like Prema.
Yeah, and the what you guys
There's
were talking
no rule
about.
actually limiting them from bringing cars that are beyond it, unlike how NASCAR has the 4-car limit.
Right. But you guys were talking about like some of these smaller teams not being able to afford it. We don't really have many details as to how much these charters actually cost either. Unlike, NASCAR, they're going for 20, 30, 40 million dollars. I mean,
Well,
it is in its infancy stages, so I would imagine they're significantly cheaper than what the NASCAR charters are.
yeah,
So,
I mean, a NASCAR charter's been around since 2016? So, I mean, that's all. I mean, the NASCAR charters, when they were first bought, were probably like 2-3 million a piece, and they've just exploded in value as more and more teams are trying to buy into the system.
yeah.
Now, so right now, there's 25 charters in Indy,
Yeah,
and there's a limit. There is a maximum amount of 27 entries allowed per Indy 500 or per non-Indy 500 race. So any
yeah,
other race.
yeah.
So
So,
if any team adds an entry, it'd be their team versus the new racing team competing for those last 2 spots.
yeah. Yeah, and I kind of wish that there were a couple more open spots. I mean, even with NASCAR, there's at least 4 open spots for teams to compete for. But where there's only 2 spots, and again, a team like Andretti or Ganassi could bring a 4th car and fill up that entire grid. Yeah, will make it very tough on teams like Prema to try and survive. Especially where I don't really see a reason why they needed to cap the field at only 27 cars, especially at every race. I know there might be 1 or 2 races that they need to have a smaller field because of just the sheer amount of pit lane spaces available.
Yeah. Well, I mean, hopefully it works out for them. Honestly, I've said it before on this podcast. I absolutely hate the charter system. It needs to just go back to every car has to qualify on speed, but that's one man's opinion. Um,
Well,
Shifting
yeah, and again, that
gears.
comes back to the thing I've asked for a couple of times. Is like, I just want to know what problem they're trying to solve with this. Because, like, back when NASCAR first introduced the charter system, obviously, hindsight being 2020, we now know what issues it brought with it, but it brought stability for some of those smaller teams like Germain and Levine Family Racing, and it brought them a way to try and either continue to make money in the sport or to make an exit and not be completely broke when they get out of the sport.
Yeah. Well, shifting gears back to the NASCAR side, it was announced right before Bristol that Corey LaJoie and Justin Haley would be doing a ride swap starting at the Kansas Speedway this coming weekend. LaJoie will go to the number 51 Rick Ware racing car, and Justin Haley will take over the number 7 Spire car. And it was also announced the same day that Justin Haley will go to Spire full time in 2025. Seems to me like Spire just couldn't wait to get LaJoie out of that car. I don't know about you guys, but Brett, how do we feel about this driver swap coming, especially with how Haley's been performing this year?
To be honest, I feel like with the new crew chief coming in, with all that stuff coming in, I think they're just trying to get Haley to get adjusted to the team before Rodney gets there. I believe it's actually a good thing for both Rick and Haley like Rick Ware Racing and Haley, because it gives Rick a experienced Cup driver who can work with that equipment. Because all he's had is more younger guys working in that equipment. With the 7, it gives Haley time to get adjusted to the crew and the way that team operates. So I think that's a pretty good swap.
What about you, Ryan?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I feel like, yeah, I know you said that it seems like this is, Spire couldn't wait to get Corey LaJoy out of the door. I kind of feel like it's almost the opposite. I think they're doing very much right by Corey LaJoy by, yeah, down the tail end of this season, giving him a direct, basically 7-week audition with a team that could very well hire him for Cup Series driving next year, rather than leaving him trying out, quote unquote, in the Spire car, not knowing what he might look like in another equipment. This gives Rick Ware essentially, again, 7 weeks to try and test him out, see maybe he could be the driver for 2025. They haven't confirmed anything, but it gives him a chance to audition for that ride or potentially for an Xfinity or Truck Series ride down the line. But I also think it's a win for Spire because they get their driver who will be there next year in sooner, start getting him adjusted to his Spire teammates who are also, or at least one of which is guaranteed to be there next year, Hocevar. So, again, it's just one of those things of you want to get everybody adjusted as soon as possible, and assuming in this situation where there isn't really a difference in equipment, yeah, I think you're doing right by all parties involved, and I really think it is a win-win.
What about you,
And the
Tyler?
way
Tyler may be doing something. Brett, what were you going to say?
I'm thinking about it also with Ryan saying with the neutral way of the equipment, if you think about it, Haley's been doing really well in that Rick Ware car. So it might be where Spire's bringing him in to elevate that 7 car to make it better than it's been running.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now there is. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Go ahead. No, you're good.
There is a second part to this story. Spire does have an affiliation with Hendrick Motorsports, and there was some news going around too that Haley may have been signed to a developmental deal with Hendrick Motorsports, kind of like Ryan put in our chat the other day, Zane Smith and the Trackhouse deal. Is it possible that we could see Haley in a Hendrick Motorsports car either in 2026 or 2027?
Barring Bowman getting moved out of that team or someone drastically losing sponsor support, I don't think so. Obviously, we know Bowman's had a couple of injuries recently, so potentially another injury for Bowman. He might decide to step away early and basically early retire the way we see other athletes do it. But realistically, I think that Hendrick Motorsports squad is pretty well locked up, and I think most, if not all of them, have contracts through or at least until 2027. Again, Bowman's kind of the only one that I think his deal is up at the end of 2026.
Yeah.
Now, what I'm going to say is I actually kind of like it for Spire because Justin Haley is a proven winner in the Xfinity Series.
Yeah, I like the move of
he can wheel a car.
Yeah.
I also kind of like feel bad for LaJoy in a good ride. He didn't really get a chance to prove himself.
Yeah, but again, this gives him a direct chance to try out for a new ride because it's not like he's going to win back the Spire car that he'd already lost.
I did want to say something that I don't know if you guys touched on it, but Spire wants to become a top Chevy team. That's why they swapped.
Yeah, the same way that Front Row Motorsports this year became a top tier Ford team.
Yeah, I did hear about that too. But yeah, just me being an Alex Bowman fan, it just kind of sucks. Every time something happens in one of the lower teams that maybe has an affiliation with Hendrick, everybody always looks to Bowman as the odd man out. And like, I hate it because, said before, I feel like, in my personal opinion, I don't know about you guys, he earned that ride.
Yeah,
and yeah, the injuries happened and all that good stuff, but he has proven to be a winning Cup Series driver. So
yeah,
I
and
mean, I
as I
just
said, I'm not saying that I don't think he gets removed from that ride unless it's for injury, for Justin Haley. But it's hard to ignore that when you've had two injuries in recent years. Hard
Can
to
I add
just
something?
kind of completely ignore that fact.
go
Can
ahead,
I add
Tyler.
something? I was say Alex Bowman was personally appointed by Dale Jr.
Yeah, and again, I'm not saying that. I think all four of those drivers are there to stay for at least another 5 to 10 years, probably. And
I
that's
would
kind of the
hope
problem
so.
with the Hendrick pipeline is that Hendrick pipeline develops so many good drivers, but Hendrick only has the 4 seats, and they're all filled by very young, very talented drivers.
What I'm honestly thinking is they signed. Hey, you know how when Elliott got suspended for the week, you know how LaJoy jumped into the 9 car
Yeah,
for that week. I think they may be doing that with Haley.
yeah,
With Hendricks, all their contracts coming through for so long,
yeah.
they
But you
might be
also
having
have
him as a reserve driver.
Well, and it also depends because they could also because I would normally imagine that they would have their base reserve driver typically being one of their Xfinity Series guys. Yeah, that way they aren't having to take someone. The only reason that they pulled LaJoy that weekend was because Josh Berry, who was the reserve driver at that point, was off in Portland.
Yeah.
I'm just saying something like
Yeah,
that could be.
I before we get into our next topic, I do want to throw this question out, just to get your guys' opinion. Um, talking about Hendrick and the developmental program and all that, we have seen them field the number 17 car in the Xfinity Series for a few races here and there. Could it be possible that they may field that car full time in the coming future? And who would you think would be the driver?
I mean, my best bet would be that could be if that car does go full time, I could see it being a spot for Rajah Caruth to potentially make and move up the ladder. I mean,
That's
clearly
exactly who I was thinking.
he's had a lot of Hendrick cars kind of backing, and again, that just kind of comes down to the whole thing of Hendrick develops a lot of good drivers, but in the end, just doesn't really have places for them to go with their 4 car team being pretty well locked up again for another 5 to 10 years, probably. Again, barring a catastrophic injury that you would never wish on anybody.
Or a contract buyout. Don't forget about that too.
Well, yeah, a contract buyout too, but also there are very few owners who could buy out a Hendrick contract versus like an RCR contract, which is less money that someone like a Michael Jordan was able to buy out for Reddick. There
Yeah.
aren't many owners around that have the kind of money and the status to go and just buy someone out of a Hendrick contract.
Yeah. Well, jumping into our next topic, it's our recap segment. They raced at Bristol this past weekend, and it was absolutely nothing like it was in the spring. Um, and
Like the
the on
same
the
tire compound.
we'll get into that in just a minute.
Yeah.
In the Xfinity Series, Stone Cold Cole Custer took the win and clinched the regular season championship after Justin Allgaier had an absolute disastrous race. He came in 43 points above Cole Custer and lost the championship by 3 points.
Regular season
Um,
championship.
Yes, the regular
I
season
figured I'd go
championship.
ahead and preface that before anyone who's just listening gets confused.
Yeah. And it was also the return of Dale Earnhardt Jr., the 88 Mayo missile, as they called it, on the
Yep.
radio broadcast. And he started 13th and finished 7th, even after a multitude of radio issues that he had. At one point, he couldn't hear his team. Then they gave him another radio, and it fell on the floor. And then he picked it up, and then he lost it again. And I think he
Yeah, he
went
had
to the
no
back of the
spotter for the entire first run of that race.
yeah. I think he went to the back at least 5 or 6 times and still fought his way back up to a 7th place finish.
Yep.
But Ryan, I'll start with you. You were there. What did you think of the Xfinity Series race as, them putting on a show?
I mean, the Xfinity Series race, obviously, I think most, if not everybody's eyes were on Dale Jr., especially with it being his potentially final NASCAR Xfinity Series race. Sounds like it probably will end up being his final one. Obviously, there's always the potential that maybe he makes a return 5 years down the line, but we'll have to wait and see. Obviously, he's getting older, so.
Yeah.
But ultimately, he's had great runs in the 88, and it's been just a matter of close but not quite close enough. And I'd like to see him continue to keep running the one race a year. Obviously, Connor Zilic is getting that ride in the 88 car next year. But Junior Motorsports has been known to expand, so maybe he goes back to the number 8, maybe the 1, depending on what seats are or aren't available, depending on, because they've had a lot of driver movement at Junior Motorsports. Yeah, this year.
Yeah.
But yeah, Cole Custer kind of, once he took the lead, I think most of us in the grandstands were kind of like, well, barring a caution, he's just going to run away with this thing. And that kind of reminded me of the old days of watching him rip it around the high line at Homestead.
Yeah. What about you, Brett? Did you catch any of the race on Friday night?
I caught a couple, like the last 30, 40 laps of it. I enjoyed what I got to see, but I do have to give the shout out to the Sawzall that does, or Allgaier sent onto the track. It still
Yeah,
works, shockingly.
Yeah.
But
He should get
with
sponsorship from whatever brand that saw is.
DeWalt,
probably. Yeah, it's probably a DeWalt.
it was. The thing is with junior racing every year, one race a year, he's not finishing in the back half. He's finishing in the top 10.
Yeah, I mean, legitimately, I think he's finished top 5 or top 10 in virtually every part-time start.
So,
Except for this race last year where his car caught on fire.
Yeah,
yeah,
but
that was
even
another
prior to
thing I was
that
going to
issue,
say.
though, he was inside the top 5. And again, barring
He was
that
leading.
incident, yeah, he very easily could have won that race a year ago.
Yeah.
But with him, because he didn't say he's done for good. He said he's going to take a little bit of time off. So I'm thinking he's going to come back. But with Connor Zillage in the 88, you got Justin Haley in the 7. I can't remember who else is still left on the team.
Yeah, I think
He's still
Mayer is heading to one of the Stuart
Stuart
Haas
Haas.
cars. So that leaves the number 1 open.
And then
Sammy
Brandon
Smith,
Jones.
is he moving somewhere?
I haven't heard anything about Smith. I know Brandon Jones is going back to JGR.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
That's two potential cars that are open at JRM next year.
Yeah, the 9 and the 1. I thought I'd heard
Maybe
something about Sammy Smith, too. Maybe,
Well,
was it him going to... Let me see if I can find it real quick, but you guys can keep going.
so
Yeah.
if Sammy Smith does stay, move him to the 1, it gives Junior his 8 back. Gives him something that he's used to driving. But if Junior Motorsports is losing 3 drivers instead of 2, I don't know who they're going to come in to replace who's leaving.
Okay,
Or does
so
he
Sammy
already?
Smith has been re-signed to Junior Motorsports. That was the update I had seen. So he's
So they
staying at
still.
Junior Motorsports next year. Now they could
So do
still
they have?
shuffle. Hmm.
They still have one car open.
They would
Two.
have two. They've got Brandon Jones and Sam Mayer's cars opening up. So
Well, technically they'd
theoretically,
have
Sammy
one.
Smith could move to the 1 or the 9 and open up the 8 for Junior.
I know, but I'm saying they still need to sign one more driver to have that 4 car team like they always did.
Yeah.
Well, that going back to what you said a minute ago, Ryan. I know the pipeline isn't really that much open, but that could be Rajah Caruth coming up. But I did hear that Junior
I
was
think Raja
trying.
should stay in the trucks one more year.
I fully agree, but I did hear Junior said that they're working on getting funding for Carson Quapple.
Yeah. Yeah, Carson
Which would be a
Quapple.
good person to get into that
Actually,
car.
Carson Quapple would actually, I think, would make a pretty good fit in the number 9 car if you look at some of the other drivers who have gotten the 9. Mostly looking at
Noah,
Noah
Chase.
Gregson, Tyler Reddick before him. I
Chase
think
Elliott.
Carson, yeah, I think Carson really fits that kind of MO and that behavioral aspect of the 9.
Who's the crew
Um,
chief for the 9?
Uh, Not sure at this
you're
point.
asking the wrong guy. Um,
I'm looking it up.
Tyler's been pretty quiet. Tyler, what were your thoughts on the Xfinity race?
Sorry, I was talking with people, but I just thought the last few laps. I honestly think it wasn't a banger, but it wasn't a bad race.
Well, and I think our opinion of the Xfinity race was definitely colored by what we saw the following night, which we will be getting into in a moment.
Yeah, I do
Yeah,
have
it
an
wasn't a
off
bad
topic.
race.
I do have an off topic question, real quick. Now, it's not necessarily real off topic, but it is kind of off topic of what we're talking about. We all know right before the Daytona race last month, they announced that Shane Van Gisbergen was going to the Cup Series driving the 88 for
Yep.
Trackhouse. The
Yep,
last time,
97.
so we will once again we will have number 88 and the number 8 on the track at the same time. And any of you guys tell me the last year that happened?
So we had the 88
2006.
and the 8 on track in the same year.
Yes.
Are we talking about
2009.
full time or are we talking about in general?
Just in general on track in the Cup Series.
2009. 2009.
No, 2018.
Wait, what was the question?
The last
I
time
don't.
the 8 and the 88 were on track together in the Cup Series.
No, you're right. 2020 actually.
I thought it would be, yeah, it would be 2020 because that was the last time the 88 was on the field. And
Are we
Tyler
talking
Reddick
about
was back
DEI
in.
8 or Tudor's 8?
No, just in general, the number 8. But you are correct. It is
Okay,
2020 because Alex Bowman won at Auto Club in 2020, right before COVID.
Yep.
And Tyler Reddick was driving the 8. But I had honestly forgot about that. And I also forgot that Daniel Hemrick drove the 8 for a year as well. But I was more or less
2019.
thinking,
Yep.
I was thinking more or less back to 2008, 2009. Junior went to Hendrick, and DEI kept the 8 open for Eric Almirola, and Mark Martin just split that ride in the U.S. Army
Oh,
car.
yeah.
Eric Almirola, 2008 was
Yeah.
Eric Almirola and Regan Smith.
Yeah, I originally thought you were bringing up the Daniel Hemrick part-time starts that he made in the back in 2018 when they first brought the 8 back to the racetrack for those 2
Yeah.
part-time starts at Richmond and then the Charlotte Road Course. Which
Yeah.
that was still, I can't believe that NASCAR actually allowed Hemrick to race the Charlotte Road Course that year.
Yeah.
Huh.
But so Saturday night we had the Bass Pro Shops NRA night race. There was a lot of
Otherwise known
hype.
as the Kyle Larson 500.
Yep. There was a lot of hype coming into this race based on what we saw in the spring with the tire wear. There was a few drivers that tested Bristol a couple months ago and said that they were planning on excessive tire wear yet again. Goodyear even brought the same tire compound. And Alex Bowman started on the pole, got his first pole of the season. And we did not see what we saw in the spring. There was
Nope.
absolutely no tire fall off. There was no passing whatsoever, hardly. Um, and you can, look at Martin Truex Jr., who was a top 3 car and got a speeding penalty and went back to 24th and literally stayed in 24th for the rest of the race. What happened? Seriously, what happened?
Dirty air.
There was dirty air in the spring too, and we still saw excessive tire wear.
Oh! I thought you were talking about specifically about Martin Truex Jr. and his lack
No,
of
no,
ability to move through the field. I was
no,
going to
I'm
be like,
talking
yeah,
about just the race in general
They
because
didn't put stuff.
Kyle Larson dominated. He led 462 of the 500 scheduled laps.
yeah, and
And
it's a brand new lap led because we've never seen that exact number of laps led in the Cup Series before.
I
yeah,
believe track. Go ahead, Ty.
I was gonna say I actually didn't. Did anybody see anything about PJ1 or substance on the track this weekend?
yes, they did put PJ1 down. They
Yeah,
scraped the track after the Xfinity series and applied the PJ1, which, and honestly, in my opinion, probably ruined the track for the rest of the weekend. But that's just me.
Scraping the
I
track.
don't
To be
know.
honest, scraping the track probably got rid of the rubber.
Right. That's exactly what the point I was
No,
trying to
wait, they
make.
didn't do. They wait. I want to go before we continue. I want to say they used a completely different substance in spring where they couldn't get it heated up. Remember, because of the track temperature because it was cool.
I don't recall them putting anything down in the spring. I just know that the
They
track
put
was
some. They
cooler
did
and the track was not taking rubber at all.
because
yeah.
it was too
Well,
cold.
then
It
in
was
that
warmer.
case, scraping all the rubber off should have made it more similar to the spring race. If in the spring race it couldn't take rubber.
Yeah. Well, according to the other podcast that I listened to earlier this week, NASCAR's reasoning for putting the PJ1 down on the bottom groove was because they thought that it was going to be a top dominant race where everyone was just going to run the top lane. And they were
Yeah,
trying to
I mean, I
create.
think we were all thinking that in the Xfinity Series race because between all 3 races that we'd seen up until that point, the top line had just become better and better and better.
Yeah. It just frustrates the crap out of me because there was so much hype going into this race. Because
But
one, it's a cutoff race. 2, it's you could consider it a crown jewel because it's like one of the biggest races. And it was just like probably one of the most boring races I've ever seen.
yeah, I wouldn't say the blame though. I don't think the putting the blame on the tires or I think putting the blame on the tires and the consistency in the tire production is much more the place to be putting it versus the PJ1 because we've seen PJ1 put down and we've seen it put on spectacular races before with the PJ1 down at Bristol. In
Yeah.
fact, I remember I think Bristol was one of the first tracks that started doing the PJ1 and it put on such a good product in I think specifically the 2017 night race to the point
And the
where that's
2019,
when they started doing it at a lot of other tracks.
the 2019 race too as well.
Yeah. I mean, the PJ1s worked at Bristol before, and something that I actually heard, I think it was on Denny Hamlin's podcast, or it might have been something Denny Hamlin said on someone else's podcast throughout the week, but he was talking about how at one of the last 2 Martinsville races, Goodyear's tires in general, there were some sets that were just outright 3 to 4 tenths of a second faster per lap than others from the same
Yep.
batch. And I think that just goes to show that the quality control of bringing the same compound clearly doesn't mean the same race.
Yeah. I feel bad for the fans, who came because of what happened in the spring. They were thinking they were going to see a banger of a race, and then saw a snooze fest. Jeff Gluck does a poll every Monday
Yep.
on his Twitter account. It's called the Was It a Good Race poll, and him and Jordan Bianchi talk about it on the teardown. And this Bristol race got 27% yes, which is
Yep.
the lowest race out of 330 races that he's polled on his account. It is the lowest race.
No, it wasn't
Maybe.
even the lowest short track race because 2022 Martinsville was lower than that. It was like 22%.
He said it. He said it may have been the lowest Bristol race.
Yeah, lowest Bristol race. Yeah, that's no doubt.
Which tells me that the All-Star race in 2020 during COVID scored higher than that.
I think that race even got like a 50-60% yes on the rating. I'd have to double check, but it was pretty close to a 50% for the 2020 All-Star race, even though I think by all accounts it wasn't a great race.
Yeah. But, I mean, so, Kyle Larson dominated. He won. He advanced to the next round, along with Joey Logano, who won Atlanta. And nobody clinched at Watkins Glen because Chris Buescher won Watkins Glen over SVG.
Chris Buescher should have clinched.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. But I just got to throw this out there. Alex Bowman has had a stellar start to his playoffs. Everyone had him as a first-round exit, and he advanced to the round of 12. He scored more points than any driver in the Cup Series in these first three races of the playoffs, and is now seeded either third or fourth. I think I'd have to look at the updated playoffs going into the next round. But yeah, he was 41 points coming in, 41 points above the cut line coming into this race, and he advanced after stage 2.
He is 7.
He is
as of right now, he is 7 out. He's 11th place.
Okay,
yeah, after the reset, kind of resets it all back.
Yeah, I forgot they reset each round. It's idiotic.
So right now on the bubble is Cindric.
So I may have anti-cursed a few people because in a forum I actually did a poll back 3 weeks ago before the start of the playoffs, as the playoffs were starting. Which of these drivers is most likely to be eliminated in round 1? The 4 drivers I listed: Cindric, Briscoe, Bowman, and Suarez. All 4 advanced. 4 for 4 on the poll that I did of which one's most likely to be eliminated. All 4 advanced. I didn't put Burton on there because I didn't want the poll to be a blowout because obviously Burton was a shoe-in.
Yeah.
But yeah, I made that poll 21 days ago, and yeah, pretty far off on my picks.
Well, my question to you guys about Bowman, he had a stellar start, first 3 races. He's 7 out right now, but we are going into Kansas, Talladega, and the Charlotte Roval, which he has had some success at the Roval. Talladega, Super Speedway, he's had flashes here and there. Could he continue his playoff run and get into the round of 8? And you can be honest, even though I'm a Bowman fan, be honest.
Honestly, don't think
get back to me after Talladega.
Well, I'm
once
looking
we get
for
through
predictions
Talladega,
here.
I'll have a much better idea as to that because Talladega can giveth, and Talladega can taketh away.
That is
Hence
very
why
true.
I actually had the bold pick of saying that I think Larson could be one of the drivers potentially out in this round.
So I honestly don't think I don't think he can make it. With how many of the drivers that are left, You got Larson, Bell, Reddick, Blaney, and Byron. That's at least 5 drivers that lock up a spot that I can.
I don't think Larson's a lock.
Well, this is what I'm saying. The more likely drivers to lock. Larson,
Yeah.
Bell, Reddick, Byron, Blaney. So those are 5 that I'm already locking in.
Yeah.
For me, who I think the other 3 would be, Hamlin, Elliott, Briscoe. Honestly.
You think Briscoe's making it through?
I believe Briscoe, with the run that he is having right now, Briscoe over Logano, Cindric, Suarez, and Bowman. All day.
All right. Well, I just think that Bowman has just as good a shot to advance through the round as Briscoe, because Bowman's had a pretty good run. He's got 3 very fast teammates to work with when it comes to the pack race at Talladega. Not to mention he's had quite a bit of Talladega success. Well, has Briscoe ever really performed spectacularly at a plate track? Like, I'm trying to think of a particular plate race where Briscoe's been the standout in his career.
Oh, for me, I'm not looking at Talladega as the be-all, end-all race. Like, that's where most of this stuff's going to happen. For me, I think it's going to be the Roval, to be honest.
I think avoiding a wreck at Talladega and putting yourself ahead going into the Roval is going to be a big thing.
But for me, what I think is with Briscoe's road course ability compared to Logano and all that, like,
yeah, but you could probably make the same argument about Cindric or Suarez too.
I know, but for me, I feel like Briscoe is carrying SHR to its limit right now.
Also, who's actually won a road course race of that group this year? I believe it's driver of the 48.
Yep.
It's Chicago Street. Or Chicago.
Yeah, but I mean, when the Charlotte Roval was introduced, I heard a lot of people comparing it to a street more so to a street circuit than a natural terrain road course.
The second year of the Roval, Bowman finished second in that race and advanced to the next round. Bowman won the Chicago street course this year. He outdrove Joey Hand, one of the best road course racers in the world. Granted, Tyler Reddick was running him down, and Reddick made a mistake, but a win is a win.
And that's not to say that Briscoe can't make it. I'm just saying that to write Bowman off, I think, is a mistake.
But in that same aspect, didn't Joey Hand in that race have worn tires compared to Bowman?
No, they were both on wet tires.
Oh, I thought they were on two different tires. My bad.
They were both on wet tires. The only one who was on dry tires was Reddick, and that's why he was running Bowman down so quick.
I'm gonna say this, and you can put me on this. I'm going to die on the Briscoe's making it to the round of 8 hill. I'm gonna die on that hill. I agree with it.
I mean, he very may well.
Yeah, and again, I'm not saying that he can't advance. I'm just saying that a lot of the arguments you can make for Briscoe, you can make for quite a few other drivers.
I know. I'm just gonna die on that hill.
I mean,
Suarez, great road course racer. Cindric, good road racer.
So the way that I look at it, based on the way these first 3 races have gone, nobody's a lock unless you win a race or just score a bunch of points. I mean, look at Truex and Keselowski. Like, no one had them out in the first round, and they were first round exits. And Ty Gibbs, who has been very consistent this year, missed it. I mean, we all knew that Harrison Burton was probably going to be a first round exit, but 3 out of those 4 drivers were first round exits who have won a race or had been consistent throughout the year.
Yep.
And two out of the 3 of them were Cup Series champions as well.
Exactly. So you cannot lock anybody in unless they win a race or score a massive amount of points in this next round.
And that's why I look at consistency at tracks like Talladega, because I think truly staying out of trouble at Talladega could be the difference maker in which road course ringer potentially sneaks their way in as the seventh or eighth driver through. Between your Cindrics, your Briscoes, your Suarezes, whichever one evades the most trouble at Talladega could put themselves in a position to be better on points going into that Roval race.
Yep. Go ahead, Tyler.
So actually, I have a bold prediction. I actually personally don't think Chase or Denny's can make it past it because Talladega has been historically bad for one win for Chase. He's decent at Kansas, and he's won Roval.
Chase has 2 wins. Chase has 2 wins at Talladega. I've been there for both.
Yep.
Now, the person I actually 100% don't think makes it is Joey.
Again, like the way the Penske's ran at the earlier plate track in the playoffs with Atlanta, obviously Atlanta's a bit different from the rest of the plate tracks. But considering how dominant they were at the other plate race not too long ago, I wouldn't rule them out.
Well, hold on, Tyler. Which Chase were you talking about, Briscoe or Elliott?
I was talking about Briscoe. I don't think Briscoe can make it.
Oh, okay. I thought you were talking about Chase Elliott.
I would say Elliott's probably one of the safer drivers of this round, considering he's evaded wrecks at Dega, and he's been so dominant at the Roval in recent years.
I also agree with you guys with Alex Bowman because he finished like top 10 in that same Kansas race at Larson.
Yeah. Yeah, I just
look at a wild card there for him.
All right. We are going to shift into our next segment. This is green flags and black flags.
All right.
For our new listeners, green flags is something that we liked, and black flags is something that we did not like. And we are going to kick it off with the man who was there in person, Ryan.
All right. Well, I know I've got a green flag that nobody else is probably going to have. My green flag is going out to Landon Lewis.
And who is Landon Lewis?
He is the driver of the number 97 ARCA car who put up a fight in family equipment right up against William Sawalich toe-to-toe, wheel-to-wheel on every restart of the NASCAR ARCA or the ARCA Menard Series race at Bristol. Ultimately, it came down to an overtime restart, and I think that was only the second or third restart that he actually fell behind William Sawalich in that Joe Gibbs Racing equipment so I wanted to give a big shout out to Landon Lewis. Also, just in general, that ARCA finish being the best race of the weekend. But yeah, Landon Lewis going toe-to-toe with Joe Gibbs equipment in ARCA family team equipment.
All right. What's your black flag?
My black flag on the weekend, I'm going to try and go with the one that isn't going to hopefully be said, but let's go ahead and... You know what? I like him, but I'm going to give it to Michael McDowell for not doing a meet and greet or autograph session at the Bristol Motor Speedway. Was there all week, kept checking Instagram, all the other track stuff, and he didn't do any autograph signings or Q&As at the track.
Sorry, Ryan.
Yeah, I know. He did plenty at Watkins Glen, and then at the Roval next month, he's doing a thing where you can pay to go to brunch with him.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Me and my son met him at Atlanta back in the spring. We were just walking through, and right by the display of his sponsor, the PR lady was like, "Michael McDowell will be here in 5 minutes." And I was like, "Oh, Hayden, let's get in line." And so we were literally the first ones in line, and he signed a hero card and a koozie, and we took a few pictures. So
yeah, I've got one of his Raceman helmets waiting to be autographed from his Daytona 500 win helmet.
Let's kick it over to Brett.
Green flag would be the Xfinity Series race and how much more action they had in that race compared to the Cup.
Oh.
To me, at least.
I think Trucks and ARCA were both more action-packed than the Xfinity race.
I wasn't able to watch the truck or the ARCA race, so that's why I'm
Okay,
saying
fair
Xfinity.
enough. I just know that
Black flag would have to be speeding penalties by 2 Joe Gibbs Racing team.
Yep.
It basically screwed them both out of the going into the round of 12.
Yeah. Tyler, you got anything?
No. Try if I lose you guys, I'm in a bad signal for you. But my green race honestly was how the Xfinity race finished out. It was a good finish. And then the black flag, honestly, is the next gen car itself. I personally think the next gen car is the issue of why it's so bad on certain short tracks and certain temperatures.
Yeah, I just wouldn't. I don't know though if I would want to risk sacrificing all the progress that's been made at the intermediates to try and fix the short track. Because all the people saying like, "Oh, we should just go back to the Gen 6 car." I don't want to turn all the mile and a half back into terrible races just to try and salvage the short tracks. Now, if we could just bring the Gen 6 car back for just the short tracks and road courses, then sign me up.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was one thing I saw people talking about on Twitter and stuff this weekend was about like how they should just bring back the old car.
Yeah. So I have a few green flags. My first green flag goes to Lane Riggs for winning back-to-back Truck Series races, even though he's not in the Truck Series playoffs.
Yep.
Finally caught some fire towards the end of the season, and he's doing really, really well. And I really hope the best for him because he's a really good driver. Second
and
one
really young
goes,
too.
Yes. My second one goes to Cole Custer for winning the Xfinity Series race and the Xfinity Series regular season championship. He came in and the pressure was on. He shined and was absolutely flawless on Friday night. And my third and final green flag goes to the fans. Even though they were kind of bummed out post race, they showed up and showed out. I heard stories that there were upwards of almost 100,000 people at Bristol on Saturday night, which is a lot in recent time. So
yeah, that place was packed.
Yeah. My black flag goes to NASCAR for the win and you're in system. I've said it many a times on this podcast. I hate it. I hate it. I hate it. Harrison Burton was a first round exit just because he was in, but just because he won Daytona. Chris Buescher deserves to be in the playoffs. That's all I got.
Yep.
But we are going into our final segment now.
And again, just want to point out one caveat there. I'm not even that. I don't hate the winning you're in as much as I do just the fact that they got rid of the requirement of any kind of you must meet at least a minimum of 30th in points. Obviously, 30th in points still allows for some amount of gimmick drivers to make it in that probably will be no-brainer first round exits anyway, but yeah, at least then there's a minimum level of competition that they have to meet.
Yeah. Well, they're racing at Kansas this weekend. We all know what happened the last time the Cup Series went to Kansas. We saw
Chris Buescher got eliminated from the playoffs.
Yep, the closest finish ever in NASCAR history. Will we see a repeat? Who knows? We're going to tune in on Sunday to find out, but we are going to go into our race picks. And, since my camera is working this week, you can see I got our names. It looks like Tyler dropped out, so we'll see what happens here.
Yeah, he said he was going through a bad signal spot.
Okay. Well, the first pick, it is not rigged. It lands on me.
Yep. There we go.
And
Greg.
I am going to take Kyle Larson.
Kyle Larson. All right.
All right. Next pick will be Ryan.
All right. Who's going to get cursed today? Let's see. Considering my track record with curses on the as of recently. Let's see. Who's gonna get cursed? Let's go ahead and say, you know what? I'm gonna go ahead and take Tyler Reddick.
All right. Oh, that looks like who Brett was going to take.
Every time, Ryan. Every time.
Hey, I get there. It is so often I'm picking last of the people on the podcast that the fact that I was able to pick in the top two, I was actually able to get someone decent, and I'll probably still curse them.
Since Tyler dropped out, final spin goes to Brett.
I'm going to take, since we got a Chevy pick, a Toyota pick, I guess I'll take a Ford pick in Blaney.
All right.
All
Probably
right.
the best Ford remaining in the playoffs.
Yep.
Still surprised that there's still 4 Fords left in the playoffs.
3 Penske, 1 Stewart Haas.
Yep. Yep. 5 Chevy, 4 Toyota, or 4 Fords, and then 3 Toyotas. So.
And to me,
but go ahead, Brett.
And to me, I kind of like that. There's not just one Ford or one Toyota or one Chevy team all dictating the playoffs. There's actually 6 teams involved.
Yeah, and that's something I saw in my chat this weekend at Bristol that I wasn't exactly thrilled about. I saw someone basically who was talking about hoping that Hendrick could get all 4 of their cars to the championship 4, and I like Hendrick, and I don't want to sound like I'm hating on him, but I really don't want to see one team have all 4 drivers make it to the championship 4. Just because I think in all reality, the interest there of, especially a team that's as honestly as friendly with each other as the Hendrick team is.
Yeah. But it looks like it is going to conclude tonight's podcast. As always, a big shout out to all of our sponsors, Fanatics, Duke Cannon, W Energy, Sleeves, Century PC, Bulletproof Coffee, and Fubo TV. Thank you guys so much for sponsoring this podcast. Please be sure to check out their links in our podcast description. And sorry that we lost Tyler there near the end, but until next time, I'm Greg, and for Brett, Ryan, and Tyler, this has been the Lap Down, and we will see you guys after Kansas.